Welcome back, TCM2. We're back with our buddy Barton, and these detectives have something they want to speak to him about after 13 years of being in prison. We'll listen in and see what they have to say.
Anyway, no matter what your motives are,
we have no motives.
I wish somebody would have come down here 13 years ago. Or
Okay. Barton, just so you know, we are recording right now, okay? We're at the Menard Correctional Facility. We're recording on audio and video recording. Let me also get my audio recorder out in case this fails. We'll also have this. I'm just going to place this right on the floor. So are you aware that we're being recorded right now?
yes.
Okay. Are you okay with that?
Yes, I prefer it.
All right. Okay. What I'd like to do is I'm going to go around the room. Basically, I'm Steve Finelli with the Bloomington Police Department. It is the 29th of February at approximately 1:25 p.m. Also in the room with me is Detective Rick Barkus. And just for sake of the video, Barton, if you could say and spell your first name for me.
Barton, B-A-R-T-O-N.
And your middle name?
Monroe, M-O-N-R-O-E.
Okay, and your last name?
McNeil, M-C-N-E-I-L.
Now I know that before we started recording, you kind of asked about what our intentions are being here. And basically what this is that I had heard your, like as I told you earlier, I heard your WJBC interview when you did a phone interview over there, and it was there was a lot of information you were saying, and I was asked to review the case. So with that, I was asked to basically review the case. He was the main detective on her case that she's currently in custody for.
Good work.
I assisted him on that.
Great.
And so basically once we knew what she was capable of doing with what went on with her current case,
Yes.
and then we heard the radio interview and things like that, we thought, you know, let's see if there is information out there that we need to be aware of. And not to say that the people before us weren't thorough or anything like that, but basically what it comes down to is we understand that it could just be something to where when you look at something on the surface and you see this little lady and you think, not really, is she really capable? Well, we know she's capable of, because of what happened with the current case. So we thought, you know what, it's not going to hurt. We all basically had a meeting. We decided to look into the case and just not to reinvestigate it at this point, just to look it over and to look and see if, you know, if there was something that was missed, or you know, something that jumped out that really should have been looked more into and things like that. And part of doing that was to come and talk to you to see if there is, you know, in fact, new information or some evidence or something along those lines that would be, you know, justified to look into now. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we're here. You know, I can't tell you that I'm on anybody's side, because I'm not. Mm-hmm. My goal is not to free you. My goal is not to hammer you. My goal is like, look, if there is truth out there that needs to be looked into, I want to look into it. The last thing that I would want, and Detective Barkus would want, and really anybody would want, is to have somebody that didn't commit a crime basically behind bars for, you know, a very long time, if not the rest of their lives, for something they didn't do. So if there is information you have for us, by all means, you know, this would be the time to get it out there. I'm not going to twist anything. I'm not going to grill you on anything. It's just kind of a matter of what, you know, we're here to listen to you and what you have to say as far as if, you know, what new evidence is out there, information.
Well, you know, I don't know what
Barton,
constitutes new.
Real quick, before you do that, I guess I just wanted to make sure right off the bat that you're okay with this so far.
Yes.
Okay. So at this point in time, what I would just like to do is kind of turn it over to you. This is your chance to kind of say whatever you'd like to tell us, but the most important thing would be if you do have new information, you know, like, or new evidence or a new avenue that wasn't something that was brought up previously at the trial back in 1999, I think it was, then, you know, this would be the time. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of things. I don't even know where to begin. Arrested and prosecuted for domestic violence prior to Christina's murder, and that I testified for the prosecution, for prosecutor Stephanie Wong, leading conviction in February of 1998, approximately 4 months before Christina's murder. This was completely kept from my court record.
Okay.
Sentencing hearing was scheduled and then rescheduled to ultimately take place on June 17th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I found Christina dead in her bed on the 16th, one day prior to when I was supposed to give victim impact testimony for prosecutor Stephanie Wong at violence hearing. Now, the old adage that there's no such thing as coincidences in the world of law enforcement should hold, that this couldn't have been, and I told this to the police investigators over and over and over again. I assumed that I was being video recorded because there was a video camera up in the interrogation room. In fact, I told the interrogators that I preferred to be recorded because I didn't want anything I said, misconstrued or taken out of context or reworded in one of these detective narratives reports somewhere down the line where the substance of what I said would disappear and be replaced with highly editorialized spin. Of course, you know that arrested a few months after Christina's death for attacking her daughter, which was accompanied by an act of smothering and a threat to murder and with a wooden and I suspect she was probably sexually violated too. Now, I don't know that for sure, but all the other symbolism is there. And that this took place on Christina's own deathbed that he managed to retrieve from the Salvation Army after my landlord had donated this to the Salvation Army after he had cleaned out my apartment. How the police, your predecessors, could not have figured out at this time that, hey, there's too many coincidences going on here. I don't know. You know all about the bedroom window, this business about dust and spider webs. None of this stuff showed up in the crime scene photographs.
Before we get too far, I just want to go back on what you talked about when you were saying that in February of '98 had a domestic battery against her.
Yes.
I assume this is to her.
No, this was against me. She was prosecuted for was it unlawful restraint, I believe, and Christina was involved in this too because I was attempting to flee the apartment with Christina in my arms, engaged in this violent rage and was smashing furniture and whatnot, and she was physically blocking me from fleeing. Now, this is the fourth time that the police had come to our apartment. There's this long history of domestic violence. The first 3 times did not result in any arrest. The fourth time resulted in her arrest, not mine. And Christina was present, and so this involved her too. And because Christina was present, it sent not only me, but Christina and my ex-wife, because if Christina hadn't been present that day, I wouldn't have had to call the police, therefore she wouldn't have gotten arrested, yada, yada, yada. So Christina and my ex-wife, Christina's mother, were as responsible for her arrest as was I. I testified for the prosecution. I can almost think of the case number. It's 98 CM such and such.
And when was that you testified? Do you remember?
The trial was in February. I think it was February 26, 1998. Now, this never came up in my court hearings and stuff, and even though it's obviously relevant to my long-standing claim, this could have been the only one responsible for my daughter's murder.
Convicted of that domestic
battery? Yeah, she was convicted of it. And she was supposed to be sentenced on June 17th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I couldn't, and I was supposed to give victim impact testimony for Stephanie Wong at this hearing. Instead, I'm being arrested for Christina's murder. I mean, the timing, if nothing else, says everything.
Now, around the 17th, when you were supposed to show up for this hearing, you and actually after February, you guys had gotten back together.
We continued to live together up until April of 98, when it just, she was taking, at my insistence, she was taking domestic violence counseling sessions at the McLean County Center for Human Services under a guy by the name of Don Taylor. I attended 2 of these sessions with her. She'd been taking them for about a year. On top of that, she was taking domestic violence counseling at the McLean County AVERT program, AVERT, I don't know if it's still in existence, which, by the way, I think is run by the state's attorney's office. these two things were also concealed by prosecutors from my case file. This long history of domestic, strife. Finally, in April, we had another physical altercation. She struck me, and I said, "That's it. I'm moving out."
That was your place on Croxton?
Yes, I moved into an apartment on Croxton.
Okay.
Now,
And then you moved out there in April, and that's when you moved into the place on Evans, North Evans?
Oh, yeah, excuse me.
So-
Yes. I moved out of Croxton into Evans.
And she continued to live in Croxton?
Yes.
While you lived at
Yes.
Evans. But at that time, in April, did you still, even though you might have been on and off, were you guys still kind of together and
Yes.
seeing each other?
Yes, mainly because she was extorting my, attention by these constant threats that she's going to kill herself, and all of this high-handed drama that she used to lay a guilt trip on me. Because at the time, I did kind of feel responsible for her sort of psychological deterioration, because I did have her arrested, and we did have a pretty dysfunctional, relationship and whatnot. And she'd show up at my apartment all the time. Not all the time. She phoned me constantly. She would show up at my apartment on occasion on Evans Street, but she'd phone me, 4 times a day. I'd see her driving through the parking lot of my employer parking lot, driving real slow, scoping me out. She would take the garbage off of the curb to take it home and go through it to try and find out what I'd been up to. She was trying to find out whether I'd had any luck in getting a job. The last time she had spent the night at my apartment, and I think she only spent the night at my apartment on Evans Street twice. I woke up in the middle of the night to catch her at my computer going through my emails trying to find out. I mean, she's just had this obsession of, and I don't know how thoroughly you've read all the police reports. After we got in a fight at the Vonti's restaurant, this was the sort of the final.
This is the day before
Yes.
Christine was found.
Right. I know I'm skipping over a ton of stuff.
Well, that's okay. I mean, there's no rush. Yeah, we can always go
stop
back.
me anytime and
We
ask
can always
me
go back.
anything. She had called me, 5 or 6 times during the day and demanding that I meet with her, and on this particular day she called me 4 or 5 times, and she pretty much knew my schedule of when I had to pick up Christina and what nights I had her and what nights I didn't. Christina's mother worked third shift at the hospital, so Christina was in my custody almost more than she was in the custody of her own mother. And that night I was supposed to have custody of Christina. She knew this. She knew that I was supposed to pick Christina up at 6 or 7, and she insisted that she come over a number of times, and I flatly refused to allow her to come over because I'd already drawn the line, a week or so earlier. Oh, I know what it was. When had told Christina's mother about 10 days prior to Christina's murder, she made some, this was the only time that I had ever picked up Christina from Christina's mother's home. Loathed her, managed to, manipulate our schedules somehow or another where she would have custody of, or she would pick up Christina for me because of a conflict of our work schedules. And while she was picking up Christina from, she made some comment suggesting some sexual inappropriate behavior on my part that I thought was, 1, it was untrue, and 2, it was an attempt by me to drive a stake between me and my ex-wife, or between me and Christina, or both, by instilling this sense of fear on the part of my ex-wife for Christina's safety. She told me this a couple of days later, and when she told me this was the last straw.
Okay. Let me put this out there because I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing, or if it's something different. Does this have to do with the fact that it was said that you would sleep naked in the bed with?
Yes.
Did you ever sleep naked in the bed with Christina?
This whole thing came from when I told police detectives, Shepard and McKinley or whoever first documented this. I wasn't telling them that, hey, I sleep naked with my daughter or anything like that. What I was telling them was, told Christina's mother that I did so, and the only reason I told the police detectives this was to demonstrate the extent to which to sever my links with and Christina.
Did you ever tell any of the detectives back then that that you did sleep with Christina?
No.
And did you ever make the comment that said anybody that thinks it's wrong for a parent to sleep naked with their child, you know, for them to even say there's something wrong with that they're sick in the mind?
The naked part, no. Anybody that thinks, I don't know precisely what I said, but generally what I said was, I don't know, anybody that envisions impropriety between a father and a daughter,
Okay.
as a presumption of the family, I don't know, relationship is sick. I don't remember my exact words. Maybe I said words to that effect, but I don't think I said anybody that thinks that a grown man that sleeps naked with a child is whatever the quote was that you just made.
Like sick in the mind, or
Yeah,
sick,
but I was offended that the detectives had this presumption that, I don't know, I was some kind of sexual beast and was engaging in sexual impropriety, one, with my own daughter, two, with anyone under legal age, and three, with an infant. I mean, it's an abomination. And I basically told them what I thought of their ideas.
Okay.
Now, my exact quote, I don't know. The point is, or at least from my standpoint, the point is, this is like the only conversation I had ever had. She told me this a couple of days later, and when she told me this, I realized that had crossed the Rubicon now and was heading down, I don't know, a road to, and she had just crossed the line totally. And from that point on, she was not going to be around my daughter ever. And she never was, except during the course of her murder. But the 16th, the night, or the 15th, excuse me. Christina was murdered on the night of the 15th, not the night of the 16th. And my second called me about 5 or 6 times. She said, "Well, go. I want to come over. I want to come over." "No, you're not coming over. You know, I don't want you to come over here anyway. But you're especially not coming over when Christina's here. From here on out, she's not going to be around my daughter. Period." And really, I don't want her around whether my daughter's here or not. But she's like, "Oh, I must talk to you," and she's crying, and I'm going to kill myself. My life is over if you don't. La da 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 da. The same old thing that she's been handing me for, I don't know, 2 months prior to then. So finally, I agreed to meet her at the Avanti's restaurant. And she said, "Well, go pick up Christina first, you know." And I was like, "Well, okay, maybe I will. Okay, whatever." And I ended up going to the restaurant. I decided not to pick up Christina first and instead went to the restaurant.
So Barton's meeting Masuk at a restaurant. Where was this information 13 years ago? We'll learn more when we get back.
She wanted me then to, before we even sat at the table, go back and pick up Christina and bring her to our dinner. Excuse me, which I didn't want to do, because for one reason, I knew that dinner wasn't going to turn out pretty, and so we argued throughout dinner, and several of the subjects of our argument had to do with. She had discovered that I had just accepted a job at Avanti, or at Applebee's in Pekin. She had been accessing my telephone records, long-distance telephone records, through her employer, which was Anderson Financial, which does billing for AT&T. So I guess she sets at a terminal and she types in my phone number. She has my entire telephone history, including who I called, for how long, what their phone numbers are, everything. And she had confessed that she had pulled the garbage off of my curb earlier in the week and read some, I don't know, discarded emails or something about this new job that I'd had. There were several other things about me testifying at her sentencing hearing, scheduled for 2 days later, which is June 17th. I can't remember what else it was.
Now you
I
said
know I'm going to remember all this stuff after you guys leave.
no, that's okay. We'll take our time. You were saying, and I just want to make sure I heard you correctly, that you were going to be working out in Pekin,
Yes.
and the job. Did you say it was going to be Avanti's, or did you say?
No, I said Avanti. I meant
but it was
Applebee's.
Applebee's. Okay.
Applebee's.
All right.
I had just accepted a job at Applebee's. I was due to begin working at the end of the month. 1st of July, I think, was supposed to be my first day. And so and this was in Pekin, so obviously I was going to have to move fairly soon. And really the only reason I had accepted the job, or one of the main reasons, was this is the only way I was going to get away from this woman. And in fact, this might be important too, the very day that I picked up Christina, I asked Christina's mother if she would be willing to move to Pekin with me, to get her out of the area too, because I didn't think that Christina or be safe with rolling about. I mean, it's easy to say in retrospect, but even then, I can't say that I knew she was, a psychopathic maniac killer or anything like that, but I mean, she was definitely, bordering on being psychotic.
At what point in your relationship, or if it was after you broke up during one of those times, because I know you guys were kind of, it seemed like, from me reading the report, it seemed like you guys were kind of on and off quite a bit. Right. Was there ever a point, or when was that point, if there was, when you thought, I don't think it's safe for Christina to be around? Was it
It's not that
right before this?
It's not that to be quite honest, I never honestly thought that I would have ever actually done something to Christina. That my first clue that she was capable of this was, after Christina was dead. It never occurred to me that she would have taken it, to that kind of level. Now, there was a number of, domestic violence incidents where, Christina was present once or twice where, she potentially could have been harmed, but she never, overtly did anything to Christina or said or implied or anything that she was going to do. I mean, she was very careful about that. If she ever, let that part of her persona reveal itself to me, she knew it would have been over with me, because she knew that, first and foremost in my life was Christina's, well-being and safety. And, I mean, looking back, I must have been brain dead or blind to the warning signs, because there were, must have been dozens that I think back and say, why didn't I see this coming a mile away? And
now, were there instances, I know you said there's only once or twice where you actually picked up Christina from...
I think it was only once.
Were there times where, whether it be because of work schedules or whatnot, was there times where she may not pick her up, but she would be alone with Christina?
Oh,
say her daughter? And did everything usually go okay with that? I mean, was there ever any issues where, you saw suspicious injury to Christina when you came home or anything like that?
There's a couple instances, but it's not really anything concrete. Christina, I mean, I can think of a number of instances, and I can't specify the dates or this isn't anything concrete, that Christina was real apprehensive around. And I remember a couple instances where I would come to our Croxton Street apartment after having picked up Christina, and Christina would sort of cringe at the sight of me. She'd like cling to my arm. I'd be like, well, so it's okay, Christina, go over there and give a hug, because her acting stepmother, more or less. And Christina was very, I don't know what the word, she's hesitant and apprehensive, and I don't know, she had real mixed emotions of that. And of course at the time I didn't read anything, sinister into that, but it was unusual for Christina. And she was also petrified at the sight of his husband.
Do you know why that might be?
Yeah, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I am convinced that he had something to do with Christina's murder. Absolutely.
Well, I know that you had said that, you'd stated that in some
I
facts and
believe
stuff.
that this is just my opinion, and I don't have anything concrete, but I think that was doing ghastly things with my daughter when I was not around. And I think that if there was any evidence that my daughter had been sexually abused prior to her murder, never mind during the course of it, prior to her murder, this had been done while I had custody of my daughter when I wasn't around. And I think that her husband probably participated in it.
What would make you say that you think he would participate?
She was terrified at the sight of him. She's not like that around anybody else, but when he'd walk through the door, she'd run out of the room or come and just cling to me with all of her might. And aside from the fact that I'm absolutely convinced he has something to do with Christina's murder. I mean, have you guys gotten into this hair evidence and stuff, and the hair that belonged to the non-adult Caucasian Mongoloid? You know, the only person in Christina's short life who fits those parameters, these hairs were in her hands.
Yeah, I read that, but the evidence...
I don't care what the evidence is. I saw those hairs myself. Those were not Christina's hairs.
Well, but that's what it said. That's all I'm telling you.
That's not what they said.
I'm just telling you what's in the evidence.
Let me tell you what the evidence report says. It says that the hairs originated from a non-adult Caucasian Mongoloid child.
Mongoloid?
I've never even heard of that.
So, either one of two things is happening. Christina's sitting here pulling out her hair as she's being murdered by an arm's length attacker, or her attacker is a non-adult of Caucasian Mongoloid origin. And there's only one person in Christina's short life who fits those parameters to the T. You know who it is? The person who had custody of Christina's. According to who I talked to on the phone from the jail, I don't know if you're aware of the phone calls made on the heels of our fight. If you've studied the phone records at all.
Okay. I know, but I want to...
7 o'clock, 7:01, 7:02, 7:03 makes a succession of calls trying to track down. Calls his house first, less than 30-second call. Probably got an answering machine. Calls his father's house, not there, less than 45 seconds. Calls his sister, less than 30 seconds. She's desperate to find him. Calls him again, 8:20, 40-second call. Still not there. Finally gets hold of him at 11:52, 9-minute phone call. This is the phone call from supposedly trying to get him to help her find some drugs to plant in my car so that she can then set me up for this drug arrest. Are you familiar with this? Okay, well, this isn't in the case file because Detective Shepard concealed this from his reports.
Let me ask you, what proof do you have of this? Of what you're about to tell me about this, her trying to plant drugs on you?
This is what told me, being his wife at the time. As a matter of fact, during the pretrial evidentiary hearing of March 4th, 1999, testified to this himself, as did, but says, well, I was just joking, but according to his own testimony. So don't take my word for it. This is documented in my court case. That for weeks, or for 2 weeks or so, I've been bugging to find some drugs to plant in my car so that she could set me up.
But you guys were together during this time, correct?
Yeah, it was, which means that Christina's murder was planned at least a week or two in advance. And this business about setting me up for drugs, that's not what they were planning on setting me up for. They're planning on setting me up for Christina's murder. But the only thing that they would concede to, that this was something about planting drugs in my car, well, you know, there were no drugs in my car. Instead, my daughter was killed. What were they really setting me up for? A drug case or a murder case?
Let me touch on just a couple things, just to kind of put it out there, because I wasn't present during any of this. Okay, but I just want to kind of say, just from based on my experience and stuff like that, the thing that you mentioned about the alibis, that you felt like no one really had an alibi. I can just tell you this: as far as alibis go, when something happens during the wee hours of the morning, most people are sleeping at that time.
Yeah.
So for the most part, it's not out of the ordinary for everyone to say, hey, between I got home at 10:30 p.m. or whatever time, and I slept until 8 a.m.
Right.
It's not out of the ordinary for that. It's no different than like you were in your apartment during those hours.
Okay, that's fine.
So that's my point. I can't say that there's a red flag there of any kind because most people be home sleeping.
Okay, that's fine. But most people have husbands or wives or something who can vouch for them.
Well, yeah, but if you don't, you don't. If you do, you know.
Okay, well, that's a hook on that account because you live by yourself. According to immediately after the 11, she may change her story today, I don't know, but he immediately after the phone call that he received at 11:52 takes to go get a pizza. This was being Monday night. I don't know if they can get pizza in Bloomington on Monday night after 11 or not. So I asked her, I said, well, you know, what time did he come home? You know, when did you see him next? This and that and the other thing. I'm trying to get a handle on if she can vouch for his whereabouts. And he said, well, no, he spent the night at home with me. And I was like, okay, well, you know, what did he do and stuff? I'm trying to sort of tiptoe around this because she doesn't believe he's got anything to do with Christina's murder. She is convinced he does. So she tells me that, I know this is like double, triple hearsay or whatever, and maybe she will repeat this to you guys now, or maybe she won't, I don't know. But she told me that they left, he and left. And I said, well, you know, did he spend the night at home? Oh yeah, he spent the night. Well, when did you next see him? And she's like, well, I don't know. I said, well, what do you mean you don't know? What time did they come back? She's like, well, I don't know. I said, well, you know, what do you mean? She's like, well, I must have been asleep when they came back. I was like, what? And I said, well, when did you next see him again? I said, was he there in the morning when you woke up? And he's like, no. And I was like, well, where was he? He's like, well, he must have already left for work. I said, well, when the hell did you see him again next? He said, well, she said, sometime the next day when he came home from work at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that. So as his wife couldn't even vouch for his presence at any time after he received the phone call at 9:52 for him to aid her in setting me up in some manner or another, and he brought along his daughter. Then there's this mysterious business about the clothing exchange at 6 o'clock in the morning back at apartment. Mm-hmm. You're aware of this?
Yeah, about
okay.
6 something in the morning.
Okay, well, I lived with this woman for 3 years. Whatever they're doing at 6 o'clock in the morning, they're not exchanging clothes. This has something to do directly with Christina's murder. Now, he says he's there to drop off clothes, he said he was there to pick up clothes, whatever. The bottom line is, the clothes they're exchanging for, the clothing that they're exchanging belongs to a Caucasian, Mongoloid, non-adult person who was the person closer to Christina almost than anybody else. And given that the hairs in Christina's hands fit these parameters to the letter, and they had lice on them too. I don't know if you're aware of the lice controversy. Okay, well, this is in my court record too. Tracy Smith, my public defender, saw lice on the hair when he looked through the microscope at the Bloomington Police Department at microscopic slides of the hairs found in Christina's hands. This is my big tip-off here. Up until this point, it never occurred to me that I might have been involved in Christina's murder too. When Tracy Smith told me about the lice, I said, well, Christina didn't have any lice. She never had any lice. The only person that had any lice was that I ever knew in my life, his daughter, who lived on that farm in Hayworth with her father.
You mean his daughter?
Excuse me. Yeah. And so you have lice on the hairs in Christina's hands. You have no lice in Christina's own hair sample. That, in and of itself, positively eliminates Christina as the source of the hair evidence. Now, the crime lab, the microscopic examination at the Carbondale Illinois State Police Crime Lab, I just happened to be working on these notes when you guys showed up. And I've gone through them. I spent hundreds of hours on this stuff. Has all this missing data so that you cannot tell anything, layperson or scientist or lawyer from these lab notes. But there's one of the key missing data is that under the category of artificial treatments or dyes, if there's a discrepancy between the hairs in her hands and her own hair sample, this would positively eliminate Christina as being the source of this hair evidence. Well, they just leave this category blank. Christina's hair is noted as not having any artificial treatments or coloring or dye or perm damage or anything. But under the same category with the hairs found in her hands, there's no data there at all. And in several other key areas where the forensic evidence has exclusionary properties, the data is simply missing from the lab notes, so you can't tell by looking at it. Well, I know for a fact that hair would have had these because she has she routinely went with her mother up to Chicago to Korean beauty salons using exclusive Korean beauty products to have to get a little bit of perm activity done and dyeing and all that kind of stuff. Under a microscope, that stuff would have been seen with ease, and thus the hairs in Christina's hands would have excluded Christina herself from being the source of this hair evidence. So maybe you should be talking to those people too, because they played a role in this too. I mean, every time I turn around, any kind of evidence that can implicate anybody that can do it is just running for the hills. I mean, beginning with Detective Shepard and crime scene Tech Sanders and the whole cabal. I mean, when they arrived at my apartment, I didn't look at the window myself when I first found Christina dead. You know, I picked up the fan and leaned it up against the wall that I assumed had just fallen out of the window during the course of the night, and you know, did the CPR thing, called the paramedics and whatever. And when Sanders and Detective Arnold came to the scene, they were examining the scene, and Deputy Assistant Coroner Nafziger came to the scene. Apparently they're examining the window. I know this because I got copies of the crime scene photographs. They're taking photographs of the window from the inside and out, and I'm sure you've seen the photographs with the, okay. The Venetian blinds are in disarray, the fan is laying on the floor, the window screen is slightly bent, it's unlatched in one corner, the corner that's is latched in is not even the proper screen groove. It looked like the screen subframe is a little bit bent too. And this is 2 feet from a dead child. Okay. How did Detective Sanders and Detective Arnold not... And they said, well, we only noticed one hole. And the other guy says, well, I only noticed the other hole. It was the lower east-hand corner. I don't know if you've read their reports or how closely you read it, but this is like the Three Stooges meet the Keystone Cops as far as their awareness of the degree of the tampering of this window. And while it's true that some people lock their keys out of their, you know, and then they break in by cutting this and then releasing the latch mechanism to lift the screen and whatnot, the only way they could have known how long this screen had been in that condition was by asking me, you know, saying, hey Bart, you know, what's with the screen? Maybe I had locked my keys off and I had done this myself. They couldn't know without asking me. If I hadn't gone back to the scene smelling foul play later on and examined this myself, to this day I would not know probably that this was, you know, the extent of the tampering damage, that there's any at all. Because it appears to me from the timeline of their reports that while Detective Sanders and crime scene technician, or CST Sanders and Detective Arnold were aware of this, they were like concealing this from me. I mean, how could they judge the value of it without saying, hey, was this like this the night before? No, it wasn't. I wouldn't even have slept in that room if myself, let alone let my daughter sleep in a room that all you have to do is reach in and pull the little latches and lift up the screen and to get at my daughter. So how they missed this, I don't know, and it's something that really bothers me intensely that they didn't at least say, you know, hey Bart, you know, what's up with the screen? You know, how long has it been in this condition? Well, it wasn't like that the night before, and I know this, and you can take my word, you know, I know this is maybe self-serving on my part, and you just got to take my word for it or not, but I parked my car in the back parking lot behind an apartment building, and the window, I don't know, the lower outer part probably comes to about here, and you pass by it within inches. If that window had been in that condition that night when I went to and from my car on my way to or from Yavanti's restaurant, I would have seen it. And it was not, absolutely was not in that condition, you know, that night. Next morning, Christina's dead, and somebody during the course of the night, all right, spider webs, whatever, whether somebody opened that window or not, you know, I'm certain they did, but, you know, since I didn't witness it, I can't positively say that, you know, I saw anybody do this, but this I know for a fact. Those holes were not in that screen earlier that night. And the mere fact that the screen has been replaced, I think the whole screen was removed, actually, because in the upper, I don't know if you saw the videotape when
And they pull the screen out?
Yeah, and the screen literally falls out by gravity alone. If that thing was
That's not, I mean, and again, I'm not trying to rain on
these upper tabs, the upper two tabs are in the groove. Okay, if the upper tabs were not even in the groove, because as they pulled the frame from the wall, the screen falls out from the top forward, which means the glass panes didn't fall out, which are many times heavier than the screen, which means that the screen upper tabs were not even in any grooves at all. The upper tabs weren't in any grooves. One of the lower tabs was not, the release latches was not latched, and the other one was arguably latched, but in a groove that didn't even belong to the screen. Whoever tried to replace that screen, presumably from outside, which would have been very difficult to do, apparently couldn't get the screen back up in its grooves. And the fact that they did try to replace the screen is evidence in and of itself that the intruder is trying to mask his or her presence. Otherwise, they'd just thrown the screen in the bushes or something. I mean, and I've been in prison 13 years, and I've talked to a lot of career thieves and bad guys and burglars who have done hot burglaries while the residents are home, and it's always their most proudest achievements while they brag about. And every one of them too, they'll go into all this detail. Like, yeah, they were in there and they were watching TV, and I went to the side window and I'll show them the crime scene photographs and everything. They said it would be nothing for them to do that, and that they have done burglaries just like these, either when the homeowner sometimes is in bed, but sometimes when they're not even in bed, they're in the other room, watching TV. When they break into the bedroom, steal the purse, leave, and the only reason they would replace the screen or close the window was to mask their presence, to give them a little bit more getaway time, so that whatever was stolen might not be, noticed missing for, I don't know, some days if it's a small item or jewelry or something. Now, Christina, of course, obviously I would notice that right away, but I would not have noticed, and it turns out I did not notice, the condition of the window, partly because the detectives never mentioned it to me, but partly because the screen, was closed, or I didn't examine it or anything, but if it was wide open or missing, I'm sure I would have, noticed that. But
Let me ask you, because I know a lot of what you're bringing up now was brought up to the detectives way back when and documented in reports. Because it's nothing really new that you've said so far that's kind of caught me off guard that I haven't read. My question to you is, and here's where if there's something that I can help you with, it's not going to be with basically you repeating what's already been known, because basically this was known at the time of trial. You went to trial. Whether your attorney brought it up or made issue with it as much as you are to me now, I don't know. But what I can tell you though is that's not going to help me at all, because this part's already been investigated. Now here's where I need to know if you have something new that's come up that's outside of what's in this case file. That they had at the time of the trial. Has there been anything since the time of the trial on that would be further evidence to prove your innocence, or something for me to look into?
Well, I don't know how I could have. I've been locked up this whole time.
I understand it, but is there something that wasn't brought up in here?
Yeah, there are some other things too. I always assumed initially that Christina must have been murdered after I had gone to bed. I went to bed about 2, and I probably didn't fall asleep till 2:45 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So when the detectives were asking me, and they asked me repeatedly, if I had heard anything suspicious, I always told them, no, I did not hear anything suspicious. I assumed they were, I just assumed that they were talking about from 3 a.m. onwards, or after I had gone to sleep. I just never, it didn't occur to me that Christina might have been murdered, not while I was asleep, but while I was awake, possibly, at the computer, much earlier in the night. And when the state later on, they used the stomach content theory to try and put Christina's time of death prior to midnight, I'm here to tell you, she was not dead at midnight. This whole business about me checking in on Christina at midnight, that's the God's truth.
Yeah,
she was
sometime, I think it was like between 12 and 12:30.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just saying midnight.
That's okay.
It was about 12. Now, I discussed this, I call it my midnight encounter with Christina a number of times with detectives and stuff. I never attached any significance to it because it never occurred to me that this might be related to Christina's murder. And it wasn't until like 8 months later when I got the forensics reports about the hair in Christina's hands being a Caucasian Mongoloid non-adult and having lice that this whole business about Michelle kicked in, right? And the reason that is significant and connects to my midnight encounter with Christina was, and I mentioned this to Detective Shepard. Now, this doesn't appear on any of the police reports, but I do specifically remember telling him this. I was going to the bathroom when I heard, I'm going to say now, voices, but when I know now it was voices, what I heard was, at the time I thought was a voice. I heard a voice for sure, and it was Christina's voice, and it was a hushed, conversational kind of voice. It wasn't her like, la-di-la, or anything like that. And for an instant, it spooked me because I put Christina to bed an hour and a half earlier, and she's not one to wake up after, an hour and a half. She would have slept through the whole night long. And this is when I opened the door, and I saw that she was sitting up in her bed, and I walked into the room for, I don't know, it couldn't have been 30 seconds, put the blanket right, over her, and, told her it's time to go to bed. As I'm doing so, and I know I told Detective Shepard this, and there was probably another detective present, not realizing its significance, that the only thing that Christina said to me was, "Daddy." And she was smiling, and you read the reports where I said that she was smiling and happy and whatnot. And this is how she would have been had she seen. She was always real excited to see. It was like her little older sister and whatnot. Now, she hadn't seen in about 10 days or 2 weeks or so by this time, and I did not expect that she would ever see again. And I said, "No, Christina, here. Now you need to go to bed, and good night, Christina," and gave her a kiss, and she said, "Good night, Daddy," and I left out of the room. I believe and that Christina had just seen. She was speaking to her. She was speaking to her through the window, or was off in the corner in the darkened closet. I didn't look around or examine the room. The light was off, or it was a dimmer light. It was real dim. But I believe that, and I told this to the Detective Shepard. He knows this. Now, he didn't write this down in his reports, but I did tell him. And he was real interested in a photograph that I had of Christina and side by side. And I let him have this photograph too. When I told Detective Shepard this, I mean, the fact that might have been in the room or might have been involved in Christina's murder was the furthest thing from my mind. I never, this never occurred to me.
How old was the time?
She was 8 years old at the time. And now if Detective Shepard, he may deny this, is he still with the Bloomington Police Department?
He's retired.
Okay, well, I don't know if he'll remember or he'll deny it or whatever, but he seemed to think, I don't know if he thought this was interesting to him or not, but I do explicitly recall telling him this, and I had a handful of photographs of Christina, and he was real interested in the photograph that I had of Christina with side by side in the same photograph, and he has to keep it. And I said, "Yeah, sure, you can keep it, I don't care." But in that photograph, I gave him the photograph. It turns out just, I don't know, an hour or so after these long hairs taken from my daughter's cold hands that apparently belonged to a Caucasian Mongoloid non-adult child. And even the DNA testimony in my case, I mean, I don't know, hopefully you guys handle murder cases differently, but when you have hairs found in the hands of a murdered child, 6 in the left hand, or 5 in the left hand, 1 in the right hand, 3 pulled out by the roots, by the way, wrapped around her hand and forearm, and what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to inspect them, you're going to send them off to the lab, and all this stuff, DNA testing, microscopic examination, everything, because you want to solve the murder case, right? Oh, not in my case. these things were never even sent off to a lab, supposedly, according to all the paperwork and the lab notes and stuff, until the following November. And the only reason they were is because I personally was throwing a fit in front of the judge over this. After I read about the hairs in the autopsy report and in crime scene Sanders' own crime scene tech reports, I'm like, hey, what the hell am I doing here? How come I don't have any lab notes? Why is this stuff not being examined? This stuff should have been examined within the first week or two tops. This stuff should have been examined before you even made an arrest, for Christ's sake. They had not questioned anybody prior to arresting me. They hadn't questioned Christina's mother, anyone. They just arrested me prior to any investigative activity at all. They might have talked to like maybe 2 neighbors of mine, but if you go through the timeline of the reports and whatnot, I mean, I wasn't a threat, you know, as a flight risk or anything like that. They could have waited a couple of days and you know, followed where the evidence leads you, or all these, you know, CSI cliches you see on TV. Just, you know, do an investigation and then arrest, you know, wherever the evidence points you. There's nothing in my, you know, my personal, I don't know, character or my biography or criminal biography or whatever, or my relations with my daughter, that is consistent with me having murdered her for any reason at all, especially on the heels of my bitter breakup with my estranged girlfriend. But all of the evidence or the circumstances are far more consistent. You know, you don't have a smoking gun maybe, but I mean, who is more likely to have killed my daughter? Her father or this maniac? And now you know she's a maniac. I mean, she's not just a maniac. She's a coldly calculating, you know, premeditated. I mean, you know, from the Tida case. I mean, I haven't read the files or anything, but
how do I prove that anybody was in that apartment other than you and Christina? I mean, your theory, just so that I understand, your theory is the bedroom window, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So with that being the case, and with, you know, and I did see the videotape from the inside of the window and that, and then of course, you know, you had what was documented in the reports, and again, I wasn't there, but there was pictures also which would show like cobwebs, like strings of them being
I got
attached.
the photographs too. They don't show any cobwebs.
You don't see that?
No.
Okay.
Oh, I see a little bit of cobweb debris deep in the crack, but that stuff could have been there for years. Every time you close the window is going to come in contact with the little cobweb debris deep in the grooves or in the extreme corners of the windows, but that wouldn't be disturbed anyway from somebody coming through there. There were no cobwebs that connect the screen to the frame that I've ever seen in any of the crime scene reports. You got a little shadow, which is supposedly a bug, that crime scene Sanders says was a bug that connects. Okay, even if this is so, okay, if there were any dangling, a single 1 or 2 or however many loose dangling spider webs from the screen having been lifted up in between the panes of glass, where you have tons of spider webs up there that would likely get snatched by the little release tabs. Once you lower the screen, any dangling spider web that comes into contact with anything is going to automatically stick to it. That doesn't mean that the screen hadn't been opened. I personally opened the screen a week earlier when I threw an extension cord out there myself to hook up a vacuum cleaner to vacuum out, you know, my car. But I mean, I didn't see any of these.
Yeah.
I'm telling you that during the course of the night, okay, I know you have to take my word for it, and that's, you know, you can or not. This may be self-serving on my part. That screen was not in that condition at, what, 7 o'clock or 7:30 that night, 8 o'clock when I returned from McDonald's with my daughter. It wasn't there, it wasn't like that at 5 earlier when I'd gone to meet at the Avanti's. Somebody, during the course of the night, whether they entered the window or not, or just cut the holes in there and unlatched it and just left it like that, somebody did that night. Okay? And whoever did it, is the fact that you have a dead child, you know, 2 feet from where this was done is not a coincidence. Somebody just didn't say, oh, I think I'll burglarize this house and then cut open, oh, there's a kid in there, maybe I better just leave. And that's beyond all possibility. Now, I know you got to take my word for this, but that's fine.
All I want to just say about as far as the bedroom window goes is that was brought up at trial, correct? I mean, you were saying,
it wasn't addressed like I just addressed it now. It's just basically my public defender did not meaningfully cross-examine Sanders and Arnold, and these guys are like falling down over each other, making these hysterical claims about spiderweb sightings after after I was the one who recalled detectives back to the scene, after I personally found this stuff myself. It's clear when you read the timeline and the dates of these reports and stuff that Sanders is going back into his reports and making retroactive spiderweb claims after I had just, I don't know, dropped the bomb on their attempt to railroad me while they were caught red-handed or something. I don't know what the heck was on their minds.
And the other thing I just want to bring up too, and I don't know if this was something that you had brought up again, I don't know the details of all that as far as like the trial. That was looked at by the state's attorney's office. I looked at our case and our case file and everything that was documented here. Now my question to you is, because it wasn't just cobwebs in that, there's a lot of things that we look for when people go through windows. Like if there's, usually there's a layer of dust underneath the window, and if someone crawls through there, they're going to disturb a layer of dust, things along those lines.
Okay.
And so my point to you is with what you're telling me about this window, this is not anything I can do for you as far as this was already brought up at trial. And so why I'm here is if there's something new that hadn't already been covered at trial, that's kind of what I'm looking for, so that I can try to, if there's a way I can investigate it for you, I can do so.
These areas of dust that you're referring to is a depressed area. If you looked at a cross-section of the window, you got the sill, inner sill here, and then it goes down about an inch, and then you have about, 4 or 5 inches between the inner sill and the outer window area, and the aluminum frame is like 2 inches high. This is a depressed area. A platoon of killers could have come through there without disturbing any of the dust in this depressed area. Even if the person had dragged themselves through the window on their belly, it would not have disturbed any area in that dust. Aside from which, we have to take the word of the detectives and the crime scene technician who are all writing their reports after I'm arrested. You think they want to...
Yeah. I mean,
the whole case was tainted by their arrest of me prior to... If they had done all this stuff beforehand, documented this and stuff, okay, fine. But they had an agenda it seemed like they had an agenda before they even arrived at my apartment, but certainly they did once they started writing these reports. And their agenda is to, undermine any evidence that anybody other than me murdered my daughter, including intruder evidence.
Why? Let me ask you this. Most people, I'll just speak for me, Detective Barks can speak for himself if he wants to add something in here, but my thing would be this. If there was a child murdered, I am going to want to get that person responsible for killing that child. And if there is, let's just say, this is a totally separate case than what we're talking about here. Let's say it's another child murder. If there's evidence that's all of a sudden I might think initially, hey, it's this person here. And all of a sudden there's evidence where I'm saying, now wait a second. I don't think it's this person. I think it could be this person. I'm not going to just say, forget all that evidence, let's ignore that, let's even fudge our reports, let's go after this person for whatever reason, especially the parent of a dead child, just for the fact of it's already a horrendous thing for that parent to deal with. Now, why am I on top of that going to say, not only do you have to deal with the loss of your child, the death of your child, now I'm going to try to pin it on you. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
Well,
and it's not like this is like 1960, this is 1998, this is... I did work with a few of these guys.
Trying to defend the integrity.
No, what I'm telling you is...
I'm sorry.
No. What I'm saying to you, though, is, and I'm looking at it objectively, I'm not saying, how dare you suggest it, not at all. What I'm saying, because I know that in every field, there are people that do not do a great job, and I understand that. But I'm just trying to get you to just think for a second here, is that it would make no sense if there's clear evidence, if there's something that's obvious as heck that, hey, wait a second, somebody else could have done this. Why would, and on top of that, let's just say that there's even one officer that says, you know what, I don't care. I don't like Barton, I don't care, I'm going to ignore this. You have to get all the other people involved to do the same thing, the state's attorney's office to do the same thing. You have to get all these people in cahoots to basically say, let's railroad this guy, even though we feel he didn't do it. I mean, just, you know what I'm saying? I just...
Well, if I hadn't seen this happen myself and been the victim of it, I'd say, yeah, that's a pretty tall tale. That's a lot to swallow. Every time I turn around, I mean, why would... Take, for example. Okay. Stephanie Wong is required by law to disclose the prior convictions of any witnesses or potential witnesses as part of Supreme Court Rule 412, subsection whatever. But yet, when it comes to she conceals, she documents are two, I don't know, prior shoplifting cases, but the domestic violence case, which she personally prosecuted this case, so she knows about it, for Christ's sake, you know? Why would she keep that out of the file? Okay. She was consulted by Detective Shepard when battered her own child 2 months after Christina's murder. So Stephanie Wong knows about that case too, as does Tina Griffin. Was convicted, I mean, the relevance to this, to my claim of innocence and my unalterable, 10-month claims of mistook responsibility for my, this is obviously relevant. This is obviously Brady material. I'm sure you know what that is. Okay, favorable to the defense, that they're required by law to disclose. Why? Setting everything aside, just assume that I'm actually the killer. Why is Stephanie Wong and Tina Griffin conspiring? What do they gotta have to conceal stuff of this magnitude consistent with my innocence? Maybe you should be interviewing them and saying, hey, well, I was, convicted of this. Why didn't you document this in that? You're required by law to do this. You know this is Brady material. You know that she did this on Christina's own deathbed. I mean...
Yeah, but again, all I can tell you, though, is this is nothing new that I can look into. What I'm saying?
Well, you're asking me why would these people would do it as if they didn't do it, when they did do it. They are concealing...
What I'm telling you is all of this stuff was either brought up or all this evidence was there at the time of trial. And that's between your defense attorney and yourself to bring all that stuff up. What I'm saying is I can't go back on, like, if say, is your appeals process still going or is it completely done?
I don't know.
Because I think it's still going. It's like we don't get weekly updates of that.
Right.
This stuff drags on for years. I assume you still got an appeals process going. So if based on something that went wrong at trial or ineffective counsel or whatever it is that you might claim for your appeal, if that's found to be the case, then and they decide, okay, based on this, we believe you should get a new trial, then that's up to them, and you'll get your new trial based on what they decide, the appeals process down the road. Right. I can't do anything about that for you. What I'm here, and I'll give you an example of one of the things, and I don't know if you know about it, but I'll bring it up to you and tell you. I talked to a friend of yours named nice guy. Talked to him and he brought up to me, he says, we have a lady that, and I won't disclose her name to you.
I know who she is. I got a letter.
Okay, but he just says, I'm not going to disclose to you, but she had a conversation with, and this conversation with, she is saying that told her that at some point, and he wouldn't tell me time frames or anything, but at some point, that she confessed to him, which is her husband, that she killed Christina. That's what he told me. So, and he was wanting information about Don. And so what I basically did to that was I went right to the source. And because I couldn't give out people's personal information to him. I can't tell him that because he could be some psycho. I can't, say, hey, so I didn't. But I called, did a recorded interview with him. I had no clue what I was going to ask him. And I sat down with the guy and I asked him about it. That's not true. He said that is not true. And has every reason to be upset with, despise, every reason.
Unless he was in the loop with Christina's murder himself. Who is her midnight alibi? I don't know. I don't think he had anything to do with
That's my point. You just can't,
keep on.
You just can't keep throwing everyone out there saying it could be anybody, it could be anybody. It's not going to get me anywhere.
Other self-serving motive. I don't know.
But what I'm telling you is that's not going to get me anywhere for you. I have to have something that has some kind of substance to it. That's new information.
You were contacted by another lady. Her name is...
Yes. The lady about seeing go into a storage unit right outside the apartment.
Her alibi from midnight, from 11 p.m. or 11:30 p.m. or I should say after her failed or phony telephone alibi, which you know is phony because you checked her phone records.
There was records to document that was true. There was a call at 12:30 a.m. Yeah.
No, there wasn't. I've got copies of phone records.
No, it was documented.
Where?
The call,
show me. You got the. Come on, let's see.
I got no reason to lie to you. If I'm lying to you,
why would I lie to you? I've seen these records 100 times.
The other thing about the hair samples you're telling me, you're interpreting it different than what I read. So, and I don't want to get in an argument. What I'm going to do is
I'm directly quoting what the hair evidence said. The hairs were consistent with Christina in that they originated from a non-adult Caucasian Mongoloid. That's what they said. Prosecutors, with the help of their crime lab cronies, would have one infer from that those are Christina's hairs. In the parameters designed in this test, limited to characteristics of age and racial origin, the hairs would naturally, in her hands, Christina's killer's hairs would be indistinguishable from Christina's own hairs themselves, by design of the test. That's why the test was limited to characteristics that are dependent upon race or non-adult origin. That's why over and over and over in pre-trial hearings and on the forensics reports, you come across the same phrase. The hairs were of Caucasian, Mongoloid, non-adult origin.
That's not what I read. It's mixed.
Yeah, mixed race, biracial.
Yes.
They're biracial. Yeah,
Yes.
Christina is biracial.
Yes.
So the hairs are indistinguishable. If you were to take a couple hairs from Christina, under the parameters, the forensic parameters, these tests were intentionally limited to, you couldn't tell the difference because they're dependent on characteristics that are dependent on racial origin or non-adult.
So you're saying that you believe that an 8-year-old child...
She didn't do this by herself.
See, what you not finna do is play on Michelle's top. We ride for Michelle at dawn. She's 8. What's wrong with you?
Her parents, and almost certainly had her do this. I mean, she didn't come over the apartment by herself.
So you no longer believe that he had something to do with it?
No, I think they had something to do with it too. I don't know what. I don't know if they actually came over to my apartment that night or.
Okay. So let me ask you, just so I have this part straight. Do you think... I try to look at things from all sides.
He needs to switch his cuffs.
Okay. So you believe, and here's the part where again I try to look at things as impartial as I can.
I don't have any evidence for this.
Well, okay,
No.
but here's all I'm trying to throw out at you is I try to look at things are okay. What are the possibilities this could be the case? And with the names you've given, you have. And here's what I have to say. Let's just say that I knew of you, and I'm just trying to put myself in their place. Let's just say that I knew of you and Sue dating, and I was close to, and let's just say I didn't like you because she told me stories about how mean you were, and I didn't like you. If I ever got a phone call from someone that said, hey, I want to get back at him, I want to kill a child, I just feel like, holy cow, for one person to say, okay, because I don't like this guy, let's go do this to a child, to think of 5 people or 4 people all knowing about it and being in cahoots together, I just think that is unbelievable to
Maybe
me.
you start looking at these people's background. Is this the first time that they've ever done this? Look.
Back in 1998, there was no evidence of anything else.
They look into her background, other
Now,
guys that are in prison because their wives or girlfriends have been murdered and they've been set up too. I can think of several of them that I personally know about.
Okay, but what I'm telling you though is I just think it's just a lot to throw out there to say that
Forget all those people. Just concentrate on
people, you know.
Just concentrate on.
And again, and what I'm telling you though is, and I know it's not what you want to hear, and I'm not trying to come down on you, I'm just telling you like it is what you're telling me here is nothing different than what's been brought up before.
Okay, well.
And so the really then the direction of where you're going with your appeals is probably the way to go. Why I was here and why we came down and drove the 4 hours to get here is like, look, if there's new information, new evidence for me to look into, and I understand what new information about what is going through now. I'm talking like, is there any further evidence that has come up outside of what I told you about me talking with, and then me talking with the lady that saw, that used to live across from her. I know about those. Is there anything else?
I don't know how I could know about this. I've been in prison this whole time.
Well, just with the team of people that are helping you, has there been anything else uncovered?
They're not really
anything
telling
like
me
that?
anything. They told me
Okay.
not to talk on the phone and not to write letters
Okay.
because the prison is forwarding my letters to you and to the prosecutor's office now. So
I can tell you, I haven't seen anything.
maybe not you.
But I just, again, I'm not trying to rain on your parade. I mean, it sounds like you had the appeals process in motion. You have a group in motion to help you out. I'm just thinking, if outside of there, if there's anything else I can look into now, I can do so. If if there's anything new that hasn't been brought up or covered at the trial.
Oh, I know there's stuff, and I mean, all this business about attacking her daughter and getting her that whole arrest, that never came up during my trial. The prosecutors filed a motion to suppress all evidence relating to. When I went to trial, all I could just do is sit there and say, no, I didn't do it, and I was barred from presenting any evidence consistent with my actual innocence. Now,
What was your defense? I'm sorry.
there was no affirmative defense, because there is no affirmative defense options given that Christina was actually murdered in my own home. I mean, you can say, well, there's an insanity defense, or, I over-disciplined her, but I didn't mean to kill her, or, I don't know, something along those lines, which, one, is completely untrue, and two, is not a defense consistent with my actual innocence. I never, ever in my life raised my hand inappropriately or in any manner to my daughter, period. And I'm not, and even if there was an option, say, I don't know, insanity option, or of course there's no alibi option or anything like that, it would be a lie, and I wouldn't have gone along with it at all. I wanted to beat the rap, so to speak, or to be exonerated or proved innocent or found not guilty, however you want to word it, at the expense of my daughter's true killer. And given the circumstances of the crime, there is no defense consistent with my actual innocence. There's no defense options. So once prosecutors lied, essentially, and said there's no evidence connecting Christina or Christina's murder, we think she's innocent, it was over with for me. I mean, you might as well not even have a trial. Just sentence me. Because I'm not allowed to present any evidence. I'm not allowed to call any witnesses. I'm not allowed to cross-examine my, accusers. And I've got these deadbeat public defenders that are not contesting any elements of the state's case. I mean, it was a railroad. I was railroaded, straight to the big house with almost no ado at all, in lightning speed,
Okay.
So.
All right. I'm really about out of questions for you. I do want to just bring up one thing, and you can talk about it if you want to. If you don't want to, that's fine. I just want to ask you, this is just one. There's two different letters, and this one says hey, dear, and I'll just read part of it. If you received this letter unopened, then I've successfully had mail smuggled out. Study these documents carefully.
See, you got stuff I don't have.
And then it basically, and I can't tell you that I know that they went to a handwriting analysis and had an expert look at this and say it's consistent with your writing. But again, it's neither here nor there. You can deny you wrote it all you want. I mean, I'm not going to jump on it. Okay, but what I want to ask you is, one of the things in here it says, dude, I got to ask you a giant favor. Wait about 2 weeks, then call Crime Stoppers. Tell them the following. You know for a fact that we're at the home of Christina McNeil during her murder. Do not elaborate further. I have someone else doing a similar call this Thursday, but they are naming as well. I don't want the calls to be too similar as they would look fake. They say Crime Stopper calls are not traced, but just in case, use a payphone. One friend of mine has already called Crime Stoppers, and from what I've read on a statement, that call had a lot of weight. Their stories already have cracks in them. I'm trying to get the police to re-question and question them again so that the crack can be busted wide open. Do not tell anyone what you're doing. Code, if I ask you, fucked CS, that means that you did call Crime Stoppers.
What's the date of that letter?
August 5th.
Okay.
So, and I'm assuming it's 98, but it doesn't say.
Yeah.
So, can you tell me, what was the reason for that letter, or?
Trying to get the police to examine these people. Now, I'm trying to think what happened in August, August what?
5th.
5th. This is about the time the failed her polygraph test. Her phone records were being examined about that time too, I believe. I'm catching words, little bits and pieces in the police reports that is under investigation, and she was under serious investigation for some time, so the whole claim that she was never a suspect is just groundless. I was trying to get the police to, or get Joe to prompt the police into some kind of action. And since there was already 2 Crime Stoppers calls that I heard of that did not come from anybody that I knew prior to my arrest, I think even. I figured that other Crime Stoppers calls of this nature might prompt the police to go after these people and question them. Question them the way they need to be questioned.
Did you
Not just take them at face value. Oh, I didn't know anything about her. No, I never heard her act violent or say anything about it. Oh, she's a real nice girl.
Was there any evidence that you had, or is that basically like your theory on what you felt?
It was what I felt then and what I felt today. I'm certain. Now, it was disingenuous of me to tell that he had firsthand knowledge, of course. You know, that was, I don't know what you want to call it.
A lie.
Right. Okay.
It is.
It is. I'm not going to deny it.
Yeah.
You know, I did write the letter, and that was what my intent was. But I wasn't doing that to, I don't know, throw off suspicion from myself. I was doing that because I honestly believed then, as I do now, that it had something to do with Christina's murder. And even back then, I hadn't got the forensics report from the, about the hairs and stuff. So the role hadn't entered into my, pool of suspicions at that time. But knowing, as I knew him and his relationship with, and on top of that, he apparently never, I don't know if he did or not, you've got a file that I don't have here, he never took the letter that I sent him back to you, or came forward and said, hey, I think my ex-wife might have had something to do with it, because she had it out for Bart at the time, and she was doing this and that. I mean, I don't know how any of these three, even if I were the killer of my daughter, I don't know how any of those three would not have intuitively suspected that Masuk had something to do with it. And when I deduced that they had not come forward to the police, and later found that out to be the case when I started reading the police reports, I just figured the only reason they wouldn't have done so was because they themselves had something to do with this. And it was a month or two later when I had my phone conversation with who was telling me that on the night of Christina's murder, this and that about this setting me up by planting drugs. And this is in my case file. It's not in yours, but it is in the court records.
Okay.
Didn't tell Detective Shepard that? And if he did, why didn't Detective Shepard document it on his reports? There's another example of concealment of some pretty damn important evidence. I mean, if he is willing to tell his wife this, then surely he had told this to Detective Shepard too. But Detective Shepard reduces this plot to set me up on the night of Christina's murder to, and they just talked about her problems with Bart, that's all.
Well, let me just, because I'm about finished here, but I do want to ask you, and here's the difficult part for me is if the reports document, and then you have the videotape with the window and the photos and everything like that, and you have the not only the testimony but the reports of the officers. If everybody is saying there is basically, in a nutshell, there's no way someone came in through that window, and that is what you're mainly saying, then even if, like, say, he went out till 1 o'clock in the morning, we still would have to show that someone came in through that window. And maybe it's just something that I can't do. Maybe it's just something that you have to hope that your appeals. I just want you to understand where I'm coming from.
I understand.
That's all I'm trying to tell you is, I can't go back and look into something that was already covered. It's already been covered. It's already been.
Maybe they got it wrong. Maybe they had an agenda when they were. Well, they were
and that's where your
stuff.
appeals process is going to have to kick in. And I'm just letting you know. All I can do is look into something, some new information that's coming in. I can gladly do it. Now, if there was something in the case file that I said, "Whoa, wait a minute! Wow, this is something that should have been covered and wasn't," and I haven't found that, and I understand your point of view. You're saying, well, if you would have interrogated everybody and you would have, kind of jumped on everyone harder, somebody might have said something in that. But again, I can't do anything about that. I can't 13 years later bring people in and start jumping on the throat when I have nothing to tell me that I should.
As the detectives wrap up their talk with Bart, he would be taken back to his cell where he still resides. With an appeal being rejected by the state Supreme Court, and although Bart has several places to point the finger, his ex-wife Masuk, Masuk's husband, Masuk's daughter, Hell, even the gingerbread man. Pretty much anybody but himself. Bart was unable to drum up enough solid evidence to get a second look at his case. But I'm not gonna lie, y'all. This hair that was found on Christina's hands during the autopsy, that part is actually interesting. But until Bart can connect the dots, it looks like he'll have plenty of time on his hands to play jailhouse attorney. I hope you enjoyed this case, and I can't wait to see you again soon. Thanks for dropping in on They Caught Me Too. I'll holla at y'all, and I'll see you in the comments.